Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of Allerdale Borough Council. My name is Lee Jardine, I'm the Democratic Services Officer, and for the purpose of this meeting I'm also the host. I'll be assisting the committee with the use of technology to manage the process of the meeting. I will not have any control over the meeting, and the meeting will not begin until instructed by the chair. This meeting is going to be in live stream via YouTube and a recording will be made available afterwards. Everyone has indicated that attending is now joined and the meeting will be locked. Shortly I'll hand you over to the chair, and before we do some introductions, just apologies for the slight delay today. So introductions starting with the members. Councillor Annison.
Councillor Tony Annison.
Councillor Crouch. You may be on.
Councillor John Crouch.
Councillor Daniels.
Councillor Alan Daniels.
Councillor Granger.
Councillor Malcolm Granger.
Councillor Greeny.
Councillor Ian Greeny.
Councillor Heaslip.
Hello, Councillor Michael Heaslip. I'll be chairing the meeting.
Councillor Hedworth.
Councillor Hedworth.
Councillor Horsley.
Good afternoon, Councillor Horsley.
Councillor Semple.
Hello, Councillor Andy Semple.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the officers. Nick Hardy.
Good afternoon, I'm Nick Hardy. I'm the Assistant Chief Executive for Policy, Performance and Economic Strategy.
Brendan Carlin.
Good afternoon, I'm Brendan Carlin. I'm the Assistant Chief Executive for Innovation and Commercial.
Alex Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, I'm Alex Fitzgerald, Policy Manager, Corporate Performance and Information.
And Ian Hind.
Hello, I'm Ian Hind. I am the Policy Officer for Scrutiny and Partnerships.
Thanks very much everyone for your introductions. I'll now hand you over to the chair to formally start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't think we have any new members present who haven't been members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee before, but we have Councillor Andrew Semple here. Councillor Hedworth's got his hand up.
Councillor Hedworth's first meeting.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, welcome, Alan. I hope you enjoy it. As I said, we do have Councillor Andrew Semple here, who is substituting for Councillor Carrie McCarran-Holmes, who has IT connection problems. Are there any other apologies apart from Carrie McCarran-Holmes, Lee?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Bell, Councillor Kirkbride, and Councillor Scott, and just to confirm that Councillor Semple's subbing for Councillor McCarran-Holmes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of January have been circulated. Are they a correct record? Can I have that? Can I have a proposer? Councillor Daniels has proposed that. Seconded by Councillor Greeny. Thank you very much. If no one indicates by the hand raise that they have any objection to the adoption of the minutes or any changes they want to see to the minutes, I'll take them as agreed. No hands raised. Minutes are agreed. Item 3 is declaration of interests. Have we any declarations of interest that haven't already been registered on people's official declarations? Anything they want to add for the purposes of this meeting? No hands up. Nobody waving at me. Right, there are no declarations of interest. Item 4, questions. I understand we have no questions submitted by electronic mail or otherwise.
That's correct, Chair. No questions.
Right, thank you. Item 5, public participation. We have, I believe, no representations from members of the public.
No, that's correct, Chair.
Right, and no members of the public wishing to speak, so they're not actually on the Zoom call. But of course, members of the public will be observing on the live stream. Okay, now into the substance of the meeting. We have not many items, but they're substantive. They're substantial items. The first one is on the agenda as project management system. Before we deal with that, I'd just like to take the opportunity to ask Councillor Greeny to report back, if he wouldn't mind, on the executive response to our submission on procurement, which is relevant to this item because the issue in terms of procurement was the management of that procurement project. So if Councillor Greeny would like to give us a report back on his report on behalf of the committee to executive, that'll set us a scene.
Yeah.
Councillor Greeny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The report for the procurement task and finish group that came to the previous scrutiny overview and scrutiny committee last month, and subsequent to that, about a week later, it was taken to executive by myself, and I reported to executive, and there was a fair amount of discussion on the actual report, and the essence of it was, from their point of view, they agreed with all the recommendations. I think there was a total of 17 recommendations on the report. We discussed some of the recommendations in detail, principally around the tendering processes used for the procurement systems and that type of thing, because the procurement task and finish group was mainly geared towards and looked at the waste contract from 2017 to 2019. And obviously there was a lot of discussion because it was quite contentious at the time. There was a lot of discussion around how we'd become how we've got ourselves into that position. So a lot of it, the discussion with the executive was around the competitive dialogue process that was used. And the recommendation from committee is that it should only be used in exceptional circumstances in the future. And there was obviously, I think from their point of view, they acknowledged there was lessons to be learned, not just from that, but just from the procurement processes in general that we were using. And they said they would take on all the recommendations. And they said they were already taking in some of those recommendations, but they weren't actually detailed in terms of what their responses were with regards to which ones they were actually taking in. So one of the things that I know we've discussed, Mike, is there an opportunity to actually go back to executive in the future and actually ask them how they've taken on some of these recommendations, probably, and get some more detailed responses for them in the future, and maybe select maybe 20%, 25% of the recommendations, and just do a detailed analysis in terms of the projects that we're actually doing now and how they're actually taking the recommendations in-house and how they're taking them on board, just to show that they are actually taking them seriously and that they are actually being applied. Because I think that was one of the concerns I had. It's okay getting a pat on the back and say, yes, the work was good, and we fully agree with what you've said, and we will implement them. But I think from our point of view, we've got to ensure that they are actually implementing them and the work is actually being done and taken on board, the recommendations. So I think that's how I would like to see it go, even though they were very complimentary of the work and that type of thing. I think I would like to see possibly a follow-up to ensure that the work is actually being taken seriously and they're actually taking recommendations and they are actually applying them in the future. I'm not sure what everybody else thinks about that. I think what it was, given this, I mean, say you look at the recommendations, there's 17, so that's quite a few recommendations for a report to come out. So there isn't any reason, I can understand we can't actually go through every one of those 17, and that's why I'm suggesting we do a selection of probably 20% of those and then go back to executive, just to give us a across the board view of the recommendations and how they're being applied. I'm not sure about how people feel about that as a way forward, but I think it's just a different type of approach to scrutiny, just to ensure that the actual executive are doing what they're actually saying they're going to do for us. Is there any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Ian. That's very helpful. We might look when we come to our own work programme later on in the agenda about how we might deal with that. And just before I bring in Councillor Granger, who got his hand up, hot off the press, you may recall that I was myself and Councillor Greeny had discussions with the chair and vice chair of audit committee about how we can work better between overview and scrutiny and audit. And the audit committee met yesterday, and in the external auditor's report, was a reference to the procurement task and finish group, and the auditor was actually making exactly the same point as Councillor Green has just made about the importance of following up on these recommendations. So the audit committee have asked to see the task and finish group report. That will be provided to them, and they will be looking from an audit perspective at effectively auditing the implementation of those recommendations by executive. They'll have that on their future work programme. That doesn't mean we can't do it. I think what it means is that the idea of collaboration and cross-referencing and overview and scrutiny committee and audit committee feeding off each other and feeding into each other has actually begun to happen already. So audit committee will be looking at that, and they will, if they have some concerns, will be feeding back to us on their findings on that, which, as I said, doesn't mean us putting it into our work programme for later on in the year as an item we want to come back to. But I think it's positive that we've got this new relationship with audit committee, which I think is going to be very helpful. Can I bring in Malcolm, Councillor Granger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take at this juncture a chance from Carmel and myself and all the people that were on the task and finish group to thank the officers, Brendan, Ian, Lee, everybody that was, and Alex, anybody that helped in any way in that procurement, because Carmel said it was good, very, very good, like. And I'd like to thank Sally Lansbury especially, because she had a heck of an input, like. She was really, really, really good, like. But I thank you from us lot.
I think the whole committee, Malcolm, would want to endorse that.
Yeah, it was
thanks to the officers and the other members of the task and finish group.
But it's already going to officers. Yeah, it's already going to officers. But when you get a lot of good advice and a lot of good answers of officers, it makes the job twice as easy, Michael.
Indeed, thank you, Malcolm. Is there anything else on this point? Councillor Greenie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'd just like to re-endorse that, really, Malcolm. You know, even though there's a lot of work put in by the councillors and that type of thing, there's a lot more work put in by the officers, I think. And I think some of the officers who came forward and, discussed the issues with us, they were quite open and frank with us, which, to be honest, makes the work a bit easier, to be honest, doesn't it? And I think they should be, congratulated for that, for being open and frank with us. So, I'd just like to thank them on my behalf as well. Thanks for that.
Okay, so it's great that we'll look at we'll continue to liaise with the audit committee on these issues, and we'll look at when we come to the work programme. We'll look at where we might fit that in later. So thank you for that, Ian. Thank you for responses. I'd now like to turn to the main element of this agenda item, which is a presentation followed by discussion. Brief presentation, I hope. Don't blind us with too much detail, Brendan. We want to stick to the principles of how the council's project management system works, and I think what we were interested in is understanding how the project management system has taken account of recommendations from the procurement task and finish group, and indeed how the project management system is set up, the system it uses, the methodology for ensuring that we manage projects in a way that will deliver the priorities of the council in the council plan. So without blasting us with too much technical detail, Brendan, can you tell us how the project management system actually works? Thank you, Brendan.
Well, thank you, Chair. I do have a brief presentation, and it is brief. Obviously, we spoke briefly in advance of the meeting and to determine exactly what the committee would like to get out of this conversation and discussion. And as you've just outlined, Chair, the presentation I've prepared covers ground, including how the project management system fits within the policy and strategy framework for the council, and also what makes a project rather than, say, business as usual, which I know is something that was specifically requested. So I'll share my screen and share a presentation, so just bear with me. Hopefully you can see that. I'll make it slightly larger.
Can I ask members if they could hang on with questions until the end, because while the screen is displayed, it's impossible to see who's got their hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that would be helpful. So it's, as the slides say, it's an update for overview and scrutiny. I recognise that not all members have been fully briefed on the functions of the programme office before, so I'll very quickly skip through that just so that people are aware of exactly what the programme office is, its function, and then those specific questions that the Chair has outlined already. So briefly, the presentation will cover the functions of the programme office, as I say, its role, what the programmes are currently within the authority, how they're governed and the projects within those programmes, as well as criteria for defining the projects and what's next. So specifically, why did the council set up a programme office? Well, very briefly, it is to create capacity within the organisation to ensure that there is a function that can deliver the things that are most important to us strategically as an authority. So it is slightly separate from the day-to-day functions of the statutory requirements as a district council, and it's as the definition that you see on screen is, it's almost like an organisation within the authority that is flexible. It's able to move with the strategic objectives set within the authority, and it's to make sure that the resources are in place to deliver those. So in reality, how that works for us is the council strategy is set. It's been set from 2020 to 2030. It sets out a series of strategic objectives, 6 in particular, and then there is a business delivery plan that sits beneath that. And then there is also a programme office that sets programmes, i.e. groups of connected projects that specifically look at how we deliver those things. So how does the council deliver the things that it says are most important to us over the next 10 years? Its role as a programme office in particular is obviously to make sure projects get delivered fundamentally, but also to oversee the development of those specific programmes, i.e. the groups of projects, information, reporting, facilitating, monitoring and evaluation, as well as being itself a hub of expertise. I think in particular experience within the authority was that when we tried to do complex pieces of work before the programme office existed, you'll be aware that there are a series of support teams within the council, and often they're being pulled in multiple different directions, and there are pinch points. So for example, lots of complex work needs to go through legal services, it needs to go through IT if there's a digital or a technology aspect to it. It might need some finance support in terms of there being budgets. And the idea of the programme office is that we have within the team officers with expertise in legal, finance, project management, ICT, procurement, all of those things that would likely be encountered in any complex piece of work. And this, as the bottom line there says, again, it's about increasing capacity to free up those people to be able to focus on those key priorities for the authority, rather than getting dragged into, for example, running the management accounts or the year-end process for finance, for example. So what are the programs? The programs are groups of connected projects, as I say. Essentially, there are 2 key programs within the authority at the moment. The first being around transformation and commercialization. That is to say, looking at our services, how we deliver them, make sure that we get things right for our customers and maintain the quality of customer service that you would expect, but also look at delivering those services as efficiently as possible and focusing on positive outcomes. So there might be opportunities to generate savings or to increase income to the council. And the overarching objective of that programme is to secure the financial sustainability of the council. What we want to be is financially independent and self-sufficient come 2030. Slightly more outward looking in its objectives is the regeneration and investment programme. And as you can see, it's about the physical development of Allerdale, looking at our assets, looking at our employment sites, making sure that town centres are future-proofed and are ready for regeneration. So I know that thriving towns and villages is specifically one of the strategic objectives of the council strategy. And obviously we are running programmes in particular around Maryport and Workington regeneration. And again, that will contribute to it links back to the objectives that are identified in the council strategy. How we do that, this looks quite complex, but it's really not. This is about governance and how the programs work and the projects within them. Along the bottom there in red, you'll see that the program office is a function of the authority. So it exists within council governance structures. So it's not something that is separate to that, it fits within it. And in the orange and the purple boxes along there, you'll see a series of projects. Those projects have teams of qualified officers and consultants working on them. They then have project boards who set the direction, and then they ultimately link up to that next tier above them, which is the program board. So on the left, you see regeneration and investment will have its own program board to make sure that the resources are working and that they're being managed, that the projects within that program are complementing and not conflicting. And the same on the right hand side for transformation and commercialization, ultimately going up to the senior management team to make sure that that link between the council strategy, the business plan, the delivery plan, the service plans, and so on, all connect, and that we're not duplicating or acting outside of the agreed priorities. On the left-hand side, the top left, you'll see that we talk about the sponsoring board and the executive, and that's reiterating that point that programme office fits within the governance structures of the council. So where necessary, decisions will be referred to the executive of the full council if they, for example, require the award of a contract or expenditure or changes to policy in the ordinary course of events. The top right there is to make the point that there is obviously these inbuilt governance processes, but equally there's a real benefit to having some external assurance and something slightly more objective or impartial, and that takes the form of our internal audit function and also you councillors in the form of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Of course, the remit of Overview and Scrutiny extends to the programme office and the executive decisions or the council decisions that flow from it, as they would with anything else. So what about projects specifically, drilling into that level? You'll see this is, I don't intend to take you through this in any great detail, but it's to show that there's a project life cycle that as you'll see in the orange circles, talks about initiation or developing an idea, planning that project, so developing a business case, executing or doing it, actually delivering the project, and there's a series of monitoring, reporting, milestone management, and then ultimately closing the project once those outputs and outcomes have been achieved. So looking at lessons learned, and I think Councillor Greeny's conversation about the procurement task and finish group and that particular procurement project was a really interesting example of this in action. Where the stars are between each of those stages of the life cycle and linked down to the red boxes beneath, they're essentially gateways that mean that to make sure that projects are managed, and if they are, for example, a really sensible idea but not something that needs to be a project, that maybe it doesn't go on to the next stage, it's something that gets managed as a day-to-day activity of the council. Or if we're at a point where we've got a development of a business case, but it doesn't stack up, it doesn't deliver the outputs or it's going to doesn't present value for money because it would require significant investment, which is disproportionate to the outcomes, then we would trigger that gateway to say that maybe this project doesn't go on to the next stage. So it's just again to reiterate and make the point that the project lifecycle and the management of projects by the programme office is always with an eye on making sure that the outcomes are successfully delivered and that those outcomes are linked to the council priorities. The example I gave there of maybe one of the gateways is exactly this one about when does a project become a project, not business as usual. And I think in particular, Councillor Heaslip asked about this in advance of the meeting. And what we have is a process whereby people come up with ideas, maybe, for what might be a good idea to generate income for the council, for example, or to run, to change the way that we deliver a service, to improve it for the customer, or to make a saving, do something more efficiently. That idea is then worked up in a project mandate, so a set series of questions that say, you know, why would we do it? What is the outcome that we're seeking to achieve? What resource does it require? Those sorts of questions, and it gets evaluated against a series of criteria. So does the idea, does the concept make the council significant money? Does it generate a new income stream? Does it save money? Does it directly contribute to achieving the specific council strategy objectives? So, you know, does it contribute to a thriving town centre, for example? Does it address the cleaner, greener agenda that is very important to the council? And if the answer is yes, then it goes on to the next stage, and a mandate is, so it's scored. It's almost like a pass-fail criteria initially, and then the scoring is used to prioritise those projects within the programme. So that obviously the ones that present the biggest bang for their buck are prioritised first of all, and then they get managed. They go into business case development, and again, that's that other gateway that on the previous slide that I talked about there. If the mandate is not approved because it doesn't meet those criteria, that's not to say that it's not still a good idea. It's maybe just not appropriate that it's managed as a project. So it might be that it is something that the service themselves handle as part of their business as usual. It might be refining a work process or a relationship with the customer, for example. It's still a good idea, but it's not necessarily something that the programme office would manage. And in those instances, it's still something that the council would do, and potentially we would support the team and the manager in delivering that, but not necessarily as a project, as I say. Where are we up to? As I say, we've defined the programmes, we've agreed a governance process, we've got project management, governance and reporting functions in the form of those structures that I've just outlined. And we're delivering several projects. I think within our transformation programme at the minute, we've got 21 live projects, 7 have been completed. And within our regeneration programme, we've got 29 live projects at the moment. So 12 of those are in relation to Maryport and the programme that we have there, the Future High Streets and the Heritage Action Zone. 12 are around Workington. And then there are 5 that are more general, things like the Allenby Silith Coastal Path, things like that, the housing company. So what's next? Well, I think if you were watching Executive, you'll see that a capital investment strategy was approved subject to recommendation to full council next week. That will set the framework within which our regeneration programme will operate, and some of those principles. So again, we've been actively involved in shaping that strategy to make sure that the work of the programme office is directly linked to the strategic objectives of the council. And the second bullet there is specifically about enhancing, wherever possible, our local assurance framework to be deliver the functions as an accountable body, and specifically for the Workington Town deal. So the program that we are hoping will be announced as part of the budget. But in terms of grants that we receive to fund regeneration projects within Workington, but as part of that, we will want naturally to demonstrate our robust processes to the ministry and to try and learn best practice from that and then incorporate those into our ongoing processes wherever possible. I fully appreciate that complete whistle-stop tour. Hopefully it's a decent springboard to start the discussion, and I welcome any questions. Shall I stop sharing my screen?
Yes, please, Brendan, and I'll be able to hear who's got a hand up. If I can just kick off with a couple of observations. I know you knew the sort of system methodology that you're using probably uses the word boards. They're quite common in project management, and sometimes that makes councillors nervous because they think there are these other boards somewhere operating, doing things that councillors should be doing. I'd just like you to confirm that when we're talking about boards in this sense, we're not talking about boards which are taking on the functions of councillors. We're talking about simply a name for a group of officers who get together and sort out a difficult problem within the context of where officers live. And I'll also, when I hear the word accountable body, I reach for my revolver. It's a much misunderstood term, and I think we need, again, Brendan, I think we need to be clear about what an accountable body is, and effectively, as I understand it, it simply means that in the normal course of events, the council is accountable to itself for what it does with its money. But when you're talking about funding such as Maryport, High Streets or Workington regeneration, we're given the money, but we have to spend it in a way that is accountable to an external funder, i.e. in this case, government, Ministry of whatever it's called this week. So I just think we need to be clear about the word board, what we mean by the word board and what we mean by the word accountable body. The accountable body doesn't do anything different, I suppose, in the way it operates than a council normally would. It just means there's another layer of accountability you've got to take into account, that there's this outside body who provide the funding, looking over your shoulder and sometimes second guessing what you think is a good idea with their version of what they think is a good idea. And so it's a delicate situation. So you just need to, we just need to be clear about that.
Yeah, useful feedback, Chair. I think I'll agree with you on both points, really. You're absolutely right. Project boards, as we refer to them, could equally be called steering groups of officers. So they are precisely that. They are groups of officers, including senior officers, where necessary to ensure that the direction of the project team is staying on track. It's staying on track in terms of risk, budget, progress. It is not a group which in any way replaces the ordinary democratic functions of the council. It does not make decisions that are binding. Things would still be referred to executive or council as appropriate in the ordinary way. So absolutely, that's a terminology point, but it's a point well received. And the other unaccountable point is yes, agreed. The way that you describe it is absolutely right. But as you say, there's maybe the bit that would be new or additional to the process that I've just outlined there in that presentation is that layer of reporting back to the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, who award the grant to us. We would then do a bit of auditing, monitoring and evaluation and report back progress to them. So yes, sensible points, Chair.
Thanks, Brendan. Councillor Semple, I think you had your hand up first.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Brendan. A little bit of an observation and then a question, really. My experience of project management is it uses language that you absolutely wouldn't use if we could go down the pub, that you wouldn't use. I mean, you wouldn't talk about transforming anything or regenerating anything. So I think there's always a danger that, you know, it becomes, I've worked with a lot of project managers in my time, and it became a thing of its own. And you turn up at briefings and all that kind of language is used, you know what I mean? But what I'd like to ask is, you said this is, I'm getting the impression this is a new thing, yeah, for the council to do this discipline. In terms of who you've got doing it, what training are people, what's your development plan to make sure that the people operating this are, to use that phrase, fit for purpose? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Councillor. Yes, jargon is something that we have to constantly battle against, I think, in terms of people understanding exactly what we mean. So note that point. And in relation to resources and qualifications, we've got a team within the programme office. It's relatively new. It's not brand new. So it's been going about 2 years in reality, but with these programmes, maybe just slightly shorter than that in terms of being able to define those. They were defined around the same time as the development of the council strategy. The team comprises, as I say, legal expertise, financial expertise, procurement, project managers, and business analysts. So those officers, it does employ, for example, a solicitor, a fully qualified accountant, procurement staff who are qualified with the appropriate body there. And then for our project managers, we have a range, really. We have some project managers who are full APM and Prince qualified. We also have project managers who have other disciplines like Sprint and the agile working methodologies. And we have program office staff who are, including me, who are qualified at both practitioner and foundation level for program management. So that's an MSP, that's managing successful programs. So we've got that. We've also got some less formal peer-to-peer type training, because we see project management very much as a development opportunity for staff within the organization who want to try something different, move sideways and try their hand at something. And there's a mentoring type program that goes with that. And then once people are in, and if they demonstrate that it's something that they want to pursue, we would look at training and qualification for those staff as well.
Chair, thanks, Brendan. I mean, that's really good to hear. I've got lots in my notebook there. I particularly like the peer-to-peer stuff, and you've got the right approach. Thank you very much.
Malcolm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brendan, I like your what's next. Now is the time when we have chance to use grant-funded jobs. It's not often you get funds with a chance to go forward and enhance our towns and villages in Allerdale. But my question for you is, you say increased capacity to deliver. Have you found in COVID that officers and staff have been more flexible, a more flexible role in lockdown when working from home?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. It's a really good question. I think, yes, in many ways, in the sense that we, as a direct response, particularly in the original first 3-6 months of the year, that we, as an organisation, realised that we would have to move people around in order to deal with immediate response work to COVID. And what that meant is that people did think a bit differently and were a bit more flexible in terms of their functions, who they worked with, and the idea, the traditional idea, for example, of a direct line manager who is the only person who instructs staff, and that sort of rigid structure. That we moved away from that, and it became much more about a collective organisation working towards a really clear single objective. And I think from that, we've wanted to take that experience and implement that into the future of what is that transformation programme, to say, well, when we clearly articulate where we're going, what the directions are and what the outcomes are, then people will be flexible in that way. So I think we have, but the flip side of that, and I think is probably something that you're also alluding to there, Councillor, is that COVID has naturally presented a massive drain on resources as well, in terms of a lot of our staff, including our regulatory staff, for example, are very still pretty much flat out in terms of lateral flow testing, working with business premises as the roadmap has just been released in this last week. We'll be dealing with businesses as they seek to reopen, understanding what that means from a licensing perspective, for example, and that has meant that progress for some of our other projects has maybe been impacted and delayed to some extent. So I think there are positives and there have been impacts on the progress that we'd like to make. But I think what we've been specifically seeking to do is to be really clear about what we want to achieve, and to be as flexible as we can, working with the staff that we've got, to make sure that that people get the opportunity to contribute and deliver in some way.
Thank you, Brendan, and good presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Brendan. Can I just make a point? Brendan won't be surprised. I was a little bit uneasy when you started talking about agile and lean and Prince and all that sort of stuff. I don't have a lot of time for all that. You probably know that I think Mr. Edwards Deming said it all in the 1940s with his systems management theories, and I tend towards those. But anyway, we'll let that pass. Just like supporting different football teams, I suppose. But anyway. Could I just bring it down to, if we could take a worked example? We know that there's been some concern expressed about the one of our major contractors, GLL, in terms of sports centres and sports provision and so on, and the approach we take to that. Because I think the present contractual arrangements come to an end either in 2 years' time or it's not much after 2 years' time, and therefore we need to begin the process probably about now of working out how we're going to program the management of our sports and other facilities, not just the ones, but how they, not just ones we run, but how they fit in with a broader provision of sports provision and so on, leisure provision across Allerdale. And there is, as we know, a separate process going on. It seems to be separate anyway, about reviewing the council sports and leisure strategy. I was approached in another capacity by a consultant seeking my views from the sports perspective on the council's strategy. So I just wonder, from a programme management office point of view, take it as a work example, given that we might have to re-procure, re-provide, by whatever means, the operation of our sports and leisure centres in from maybe 2 years' time, it might be 3 years' time, can't forget, doesn't matter, principle's the same. How would the programme management office go about that, and how would you apply to that lessons that have been learned from previous procurement exercises? Is it yet on your radar, and if it is, what's your approach to that sort of exercise?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chair. The short answer is yes, it is on the radar, and it's actively being worked on at the moment. The contract comes to an end in 2024, and we, as you say, we've realised that the thing that we need to do as an authority is think about what the future of leisure provision looks like generally, and it's more than just a question of, if we get to the end of that contract, do we go back out to the market and see what a third-party provider might look like? It's about considering the entire commissioning approach. So thinking about appraising all of the options. And so what we have got, which I think will probably be coming to this group at the next meeting, or at least circulated informally, is a commitment in our annual work plan as a programme office and as the procurement team within that, and in accordance with our strategic procurement and commissioning strategy, which I think has also been to this group previously, what we'll do is a full options appraisal exercise initially, which will include considering all of those options, right from, for example, providing a service in-house to outsourcing to third parties, looking at what contractors are, looking at what the future of leisure provision might be. Is it more than leisure centres? Is it all about outdoor activity, and understanding the impact of changes to the health agenda post-COVID, I think, and what that means from a leisure provision for a local authority, and engaging with the public in doing that, which I think is very much something that is a lesson learned from previous experience, is being more transparent and more engaging with the public on that exercise, and then working that options appraisal through, scoring it, discussing it with members, including almost certainly this group, and ultimately then developing out a business case depending on what a preferred model looks like, and that might well be done with a well, it will certainly be done with a full business case agenda that talks about what the social impact is, what the economic impact is, what commercially that means for the authority, what it means in terms of risk, and what the strategic agenda is generally. And then the key project team would deliver that. So that might include our leisure officers, our procurement officers, legal, and other key partnerships. And then we would get a project team together that would look at, once that business case is considered and approved, to work out what a mobilisation looks like. But as you say, the key thing to do is to make sure that we give ourselves enough time to do that, so that we're not bounced into one particular outcome by default, but for it to be by design. So I think, and should we then get into an option that requires a procurement, then it would be very much tailoring that procurement to an outcome, and not letting the process dictate the outcome, which again is potentially a lesson learned, particularly in relation to that report that Councillor Greenie referred to earlier. And then we would conduct that, and ultimately a decision would be made in accordance with executive, potentially a contract award, and then a mobilisation period with key personnel. So I think it would slot into that framework that I've identified, in terms of it being a project that would be run within that strategy and within the programme, and in accordance with our other strategic frameworks, including that commissioning cycle that we refer to, and making sure that it is outcome focused, that it relates to the objectives that are in the council strategy.
You're muted.
Sorry, I am on mute. Sorry, thanks for that, Brendan. Ian Greenie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one for you, Brendan, again, sorry. What it is, I was just thinking about LFE again, learning from experience. And we've had several projects over recent years where they probably haven't gone to plan. Some large profile projects, as you know. And I think they've been influenced by changing party control or group control at the top to some extent. And I'm wondering if we're actually doing anything with regards to project management, putting something in place which can actually give us some kind of defence against that. So any change in policy doesn't have a direct impact as much on the actual projects themselves. And I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. And because that really kind of concerns me. And for me personally, I think the defence is we have cross-party involvement in terms of project boards and that type of thing. But I'm wondering if we're actually looking back and trying to put some defence in against the impact of those and the impact of that happening on major projects. I know it's probably just maybe outside of the scope of project management, but it does affect it significantly. That's what I'm saying.
I think it's a sensible point. I think largely political groups will determine what their priorities are, and I think it's for the groups and whoever is the administration to make those decisions. But I agree that collaboration in defining what the futures look like is a sensible thing. Transparency around processes and decision making is always positive. But ultimately, I think if one group wants to do something and another group doesn't, then it's beyond my remit. But I think we can certainly mitigate those risks by making sure that people are aware of what's going on and be as transparent as possible and collaborate wherever possible.
Yeah, I think where I'm coming from, can we put in procedures and processes in place whereby we ensure there's mandatory cross-party involvement?
I suppose we get mandatory cross-party involvement through audit committee and overview and scrutiny committee for a start. I mean, we can, if we wanted to, as an overview and scrutiny committee, maybe it's not, I don't know, maybe it's an overview and scrutiny committee rather than audit. We could set up a kind of task and don't finish that soon group, which would shadow the process. I'm not saying that sit on Brendan's shoulder, but periodically ask for reports so that we as overview and scrutiny understand what's going on. So at least you've got a cross-party understanding of what's going on, even if you haven't got a cross-party completely shared agenda as to what the priorities are. Yeah. At least everybody knows, and there are no surprises. I would hesitate, and I speak from experience here, I would hesitate about getting, in fact, I would argue against having elected members directly involved in the project boards, because I think that confuses the relationship between member setting policy and officer doing delivery. I think when officers do the delivery and members, both from the executive and from the overview and scrutiny committee, challenging, and audit committee checking on value for money afterwards, that we have a member involvement at the right level in terms of outcomes and results, and that we don't get involved in the game of keeping dogs and barking ourselves. We let the officers officer, and we do the politics and the strategic outcomes and so on, I think. But we'll see how that evolves. Malcolm,
no, I know where Ian's coming from. I know exactly where he's coming from. But this committee and all these committees are non-political. Let's keep it like that, Ian. Otherwise, the whole infrastructure breaks down, lad. Please.
You're on mute again, Chair. Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. Have you still got your hand up, Malcolm? Or are you
no, it's going down.
You're just a lazy runner.
Yeah.
We'll
move on to the next item if there are no further questions. Oh, sorry, Ian Greening.
Yes, I was just going to come back. Yeah, I fairly understand that, Malcolm. That's that goes without saying. But I think you appreciate exactly where I'm coming from, and I think I'm just want to deliver what's best for the residents and the council. Really,
it's the wrong place, lad.
Can we, Brendan? Can I just ask you one more question? Again, in terms of our liaison with audit committee, there was a reference in the external auditors report to Programme Management Office reports and Task and Finish Group reports, both on waste procurement and on the stadium project, which I think confused the members of Audit Committee and indeed confused me as Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, because I don't remember there being a Task and Finish Group on the stadium project. But was there a Project Management Office report on the stadium project?
Yeah, there's a project closure report like we would do for many projects, even when they're not delivered all the way through to fruition, and then there's a lessons learned. So I suspect it's those reports that are being referred to.
Is that I think the audit committee, if they haven't already asked, will be asking to see that report, seeing as it features in the external auditors comments quite quite prominently, but I don't think any of the members have seen it. I mean, at the moment, I'm content to leave the audit committee to pursue that, but it may be that at some point this committee might want to see that that staging project report, perhaps on a part 2 basis, but we reserve the right to call for those papers at some point. Okay, that's helpful. That clarifies things. I thought there hadn't been a task and finish group report. Sometimes I admit to getting confused occasionally, but I don't think I was that confused. Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Brendan. That's been very helpful.
Thank you.
No doubt we'll be talking again on a regular basis. Thank you very much. Can we go on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 7, economic growth and economic recovery and growth strategy, which Nick Hardy is going to talk to us about. Are you a lazy runner again, Malcolm? With your hands?
No. I want to say something. When the sports village does get up and running, we should form a task and finish group to watch it.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Right.
I think it'd be far better for everyone.
We'll pick that up on the work program this year. Thanks, Malcolm. Sorry, I was nearly going to blow the whistle for offside there, but you've got your hand down. Right, Nick Hardy on the economic recovery and growth strategy. Now, can I just make an observation here? Some of you may have received an invitation to a policy working group meeting on Monday, which is only tomorrow in terms of working days, where I think Nick is going to go through that in a bit more detail. Have all the members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee also signed up to attend that briefing? Because I'm just thinking it would be an awful waste of Nick's time if he was to spend a lot of time this afternoon going through the detail of a strategy report when he's going to do exactly the same thing for the benefit of members on Monday afternoon. So if it's possible, I don't know whether it is, if Nick will permit it, anybody who wants to get the detail on that, if they could listen in on Monday afternoon, that maybe would save us all a bit of time, and that might enable Nick to focus quite briefly, if he would, on where the economic recovery and growth strategy fits in to the overall council plan, what our role in it is, and what the process is for taking it forward and developing it, rather than focusing this afternoon on the detail of what is a very, very substantial document. If that's okay, Nick. Over to you.
It's fine, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody would like to attend the policy working group on Monday, if they let me know, if they aren't already invited. I think there's quite a lot of people who should already have received the invitation for that session. But if you want to come along, then please let me know, and we can get into the substance of the document in a bit more detail. So in terms of where this document sits within the overall context then. So if you remember last year, we adopted a new council strategy with the 6 themes that sat within the council strategy. I won't ask you to shout all those out, but I'm sure that you know what all those key themes are. And of course, as part of that development in terms of that council strategy, we also look to rationalise the strategic and the policy framework around the themes. So there's a recognition that there is a significant number of strategies and policies that we have, and there was a desire to try to bring those into a more manageable number of documents. We started that process during the course of the year. So Alex and Helen have done a tremendous job in getting the resilient community strategy to the point where it was approved by executive earlier in the week. And we're now obviously getting close to the point of concluding this process around the economic growth strategy and recovery strategy. So this document, when it's finalised, will address many of the key objectives that we identify within the council strategy's Thriving Towns and Villages and Invest to Grow themes. So whilst the Commission was originally essentially for a new economic strategy against those two themes, obviously the pandemic then came along and changed that Commission ever so slightly, as we now need that document to also serve as our longer term recovery plan. So we've had an interim recovery plan for the past 12 months that we put in place to help ensure that we work with businesses around the business grants and the advising them as we come out of or go back into lockdowns, as it's been during the course of the year. But this document starts to look at what the longer term opportunities are for us as an area in terms of that. I think the term is quite often used is building back better, isn't it? So for us, in terms of the strategy, we needed it to help us to really distill our thinking in a number of areas. So those were town plans that enable us to adapt to the changing nature of the high street. Obviously, COVID has really exacerbated and accelerated some of the problems that were already beginning to emerge in the high street, and there have been a number of high-profile victims in terms of the closures around some of the major stores and anchor stores in some of our towns. We want to give people a reason to visit our towns. So again, that whole destination management theme and that visitor economy theme. We want to continue that work around supporting our businesses, and we also want to continue the work around how we use our assets to create new or different opportunities. We still want to work with key partners to stimulate that economic growth. So partners like Britain's Energy Coast, Allerdale Investment Partnership, etc. And we also want to work with them on some of our key sites. So we still have a number of key sites across the area, the likes of Lily Hall, Allside, etc. So the brief for the Commission was written around those key elements in mind, and the final strategy will really shape the future and the activity within those areas. Excuse me. So back in 2016, when I first came along to the council, we started to develop the business growth strategy, and that document at that time really reflected the needs and the opportunities in terms of funding programs that existed at that time. And if we're being honest, there was really limited government regeneration funding around back in 2016. It was about supporting businesses as austerity measures filtered through the economy. So it was very much about what can we fund and what can we do as a local authority, and not so much about where we can get major regeneration funds from government, etc. But over the past few years, it's really helped us to shape our thinking on the visitor economy, relationships with businesses, which are significantly better now than they were 4 or 5 years ago, and really just to crystallise the support that we can offer as in reality a small district council with a limited budget available. Over the past few years, it's resulted in things like Graham Kennedy being appointed as the destination manager, so a post that kind of bridged that visitor economy work, but also understood the importance that the destination plays in helping our major employers to recruit key staff. And that still remains a priority for us going forward. A new visitor website created that again can be used for visitors, but also to help those people who might be relocating into the area. We established the loans fund. We've created large employer forums, etc., etc. So that document has really led to a number of key initiatives and key projects that have been developed over the past few years. 2020, however, presents a different set of circumstances, and then the pandemic hit, so it's kind of changed again, really. So the Commission, when we put it out, probably around this time last year, was split into 3 main areas of work. It was split into an economic assessment, the Workington Town Investment Plan for the regeneration funds that were available through the Stronger Towns Fund, and then there was a separate element for the economic strategy and the implementation plans. The pandemic led to some changes in terms of the brief that we were looking for. So it became an economic strategy and recovery strategy. So it started to focus on how do we recover from the pandemic. But it also brought about some delays in the process as well, to be honest, about we had to rethink how we do consultation from the usual kind of consultant workshop, and how we just buy ourselves a bit of time really to understand what some of the impacts and some of the opportunities that might exist off the back of the changes in the economy at this moment in time. So in terms of where we are to date then, so the consultants have completed the economic assessment. So that was essentially a desk-based research project, which I think many of you will have already seen, if not all of you will have seen. And that really was looking at some of the key statistics and the key indicators for us in terms of our economy, but also started to build on some of that key consultation with stakeholders. Obviously, you will all have seen the work, which will hopefully be ratified in the very near future on the Working Town Investment Plan, to try to secure the significant levels of funding that are on offer from government for that Stronger Towns Fund. So that obviously included all of the consultation with the local community, the business community, etc., but also the development of the plan. And then really the final bit is where we are at this point in time, which is kind of building on the economic assessment and the consultation and really developing a new 10-year vision for our economy, developing the strategic objectives that sit underneath that. And then more importantly, I guess for us, that range of intervention themes and the implementation activity that sits underneath it that kind of guides what we will do over the course of the next few years in terms of helping to grow and help our economy to recover. So as I've said, we're embarking on the next phase of the consultation process. So we've had a number of workshops internally with staff to drive that process and to kind of test some ideas and test some of those strategic objectives and some of those interventions that we're developing. That's resulted in the document that I think the vast majority of, if not all of you, again, have seen now in terms of what we'll go through on Monday. A document it's a substantial document, it's a weighted document that begins to get into the real detail as to what we will do. But now we've kind of got the point where we're really consulting on not what people think we should do, but the response to people's this is what we are going to do as a response to what we've been told previously. So we've started to do some specific consultation with the likes of Cumbria Tourism, with the likes of DEFRA, etc., on what those key things should be. And now at that next kind of level, it's starting to get into the executive members, the policy working group, the likes of yourselves, again, some key stakeholders, just to make sure that what we're saying in that document is what people really wanted to see in that document. So that 10-year vision is essentially is about us as an area working towards being a strong, diversified, well-connected economy with a growing and highly skilled population. So if I'm being honest, that's pretty much the aspiration for everywhere, but is a valid vision for us. The 6 key themes that are beginning to emerge underneath it are around the opportunities that exist in the clean growth and the low carbon economy, to continue to develop and grow our manufacturing strengths, to support the agricultural sector to grow and to prosper post the EU exit, which we've obviously had since the brief went out. Harnessing the change in working patterns, which is probably one that we didn't think 12 months ago would exist, but now that when people are no longer in offices 5 days a week, and what does that look like, and does that present opportunities for the area? Does it present potential threats for the area? Creating thriving towns and rural communities and sharing the proceeds of growth. So the last one is really about making sure that we allow everybody to benefit from improvements in our local economy, whether that's through skills or through other initiatives. So we're really getting down into the kind of the granular detail now in terms of what that looks like for us in terms of actions in the delivery of each of those objectives. We should be able to track all of those back to the initial brief that we set around providing us with a strategy for the implementation of our council strategy in terms of the 2 key objectives of thriving towns and villages and in the invest to grow elements of the plan. And I think we are, I think we're, in terms of the draft that we've got, I think we're very nearly there in terms of being able to say that that's what we have at this moment in time. So just very quickly then, just to finish in terms of what happens next. So we've got that draft strategy at this moment in time. We're about to embark on that consultation process around that strategy. We will then move into the development of the implementation plan. So the really detailed bit that sits underneath the strategy, and in particular start to get into some of the town plans. So as part of the commission, obviously we've got the Workington Town investment plan, and Maryport's had its investment plan done for the two major funding opportunities. But for the other 5 towns, we also wanted to have a look at them. So there are some work that's been commissioned to start to look at what some of the strengths and the opportunities are around the other 5 towns in the area. And again, that'll start to get into some site-specific work. And in particular, we've asked the consultants to look at Lilyhall and Aldside in the first instance as 2 of our major employment sites, to see how we can progress those sites over the coming years. And then all of that is starting to build towards getting to a final sign-off for the document, hopefully early in the next financial year. So as I've said, if people want to come along to the policy workshop on Monday, by all means come along. If people want to take a more leisurely read through the document and feed comments back to me, then please feel free to do so. If people want to have a separate session with me and a different conversation, then again, I'm quite happy to do so. But I guess at this point in the process, we're 90% of the way there now from when we embarked off on this journey back in March last year. So we are nearing the conclusion now. So yeah, so any comments, any input would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Nick. Again, I would urge anybody who wants to get into the detail of this to get along to the policy working group meeting, or to zoom into the policy working group meeting on Monday through contacting Nick if you don't already have it in your diary. And we'll just remind members that what we're really concerned with in overview and scrutiny is not so much checking the fine print, although there may be, there's a role for that in helping proofread things, but actually having been to the policy group on Monday, I think the role for overview and scrutiny thereafter is to say, well, okay, we've seen the presentation of the policy group. We know what the council's strategic objectives are overall from the council plan. We know what other things the council's got the strategic objectives about. Does this economic recovery and growth plan fit into the framework? Is it something that is consistent with the framework? Does it cut across from the documents? Are there conflicts and disalignments maybe? Who knows? We won't know until we look at it in detail. But the ultimate conclusion is, do we reckon that this document, when we've got it, if implemented, assuming it's implemented properly, assuming it's managed properly, is this document actually identifying the right things to do? We can assume they will be done right. It's not our job to check that, but are these the right things that we should be doing in the current situation to meet the council's objectives? Are we plausibly convinced that this will cause the objectives for the council to be achieved? So when you look at the document, and when you if you attend the policy group meeting on Monday, would you please bear those things in mind? Is this taking us where we want to go? Is it likely that this document will take us where we want to go, assuming it's implemented properly? Okay, please bear that in mind. Councillor Andrew Semple's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Nick. I mean, to state the obvious, we're in a really historical, we've never been in this situation before. I mean, as you know, I represent Cockermouth, and I can walk down Main Street and in boarded up shops, and there's boarded up shops everywhere, and boarded up shops in Workington. So in terms of regeneration, everything needs to be regenerated, doesn't it? And I think the challenge you've got really is we're still at that cusp of people changing their behaviours, aren't we? Yeah. and town centres will completely change, won't they? So it's a really difficult challenge. But I just think that, I mean, again, to state the obvious, COVID has made inequality starker. The inequalities were there are now worse. The gap's getting like that. So so I certainly don't envy your task, but I mean, I think it is important, and I welcome, you know, you're getting employers involved, and that's the key thing, isn't it? The worst thing you could do is sit there in Allendale House and come up with something that you think is a good idea. The key thing is getting businesses, and particularly small businesses, getting their input into the plan. So I don't envy you, Nick.
That's yeah, that's the lot of the economic development and policy officer. Yeah, yeah, the impossible takes us just a little bit longer. Malcolm Granger's got his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Nick. It's been said for years and years and years that we've got some brilliant young people, we've got some brilliant jobs. They go away to uni, but they never come back because we have nothing to keep them here. We have no industry, nothing. But it's such a shame. But you've an uphill job, lad, but I do respect you for that. You are trying. So well done and carry on the good work, lad.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Nick. That's been very helpful in putting everything into context for us. Anybody else have got a question? No. I hope you will turn up on Monday. Alan Hedworth's got his hand up. Alan.
Come off mute.
Your lips are moving, but no sound's coming through.
I beg your pardon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Nick, for your presentation. Could I just say, I appreciate the mention of agriculture in your policy. It is a big player. I am a farmer myself, and I do think we can play a big part in economic recovery. I mean, agriculture's been through its problems. As we know, it's the 20th anniversary since the foot and mouth disaster, and we're still here. We bounced back, and I do believe we can play a big part in our, certainly our local economy, but our economy as a whole.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah. Well, I hope you can, if you get a chance. I know you're busy lads. If you get a chance to look in on Monday and see in more detail where the role that agriculture and indeed the rural industries and rural work in general plays in the strategy. That'll be good. Okay, can we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Q3 performance report. I think Alex is going to take us through that. Is that the plan? She's smiling, right? Can I just point out that you got your performance report, but also with it you got, which I think is a standard procedure now, you also got the Q3 finance report. We are not going to go through the Q3 finance report. It's background information in case you want to look at any performance issue to see if there's a budgetary implication one way or the other. If we're getting good performance but we're underspending, then maybe we're committing too much in the budget. Or even worse, the other way around, we're overspending and getting bad performance in something. That would be something really to worry about. So I'm not suggesting we go through the finance report. It's there for background if you want to refer to it, just to see the link. And there ought to be, supposedly, a link between what we put into our budget and the things that we perform to deliver the council strategy. Is there anything you want to say in general terms, Alex, about the report? And is there any specific item you want to pull out before I'll just flip through it? Apart from that, I'll just flip through it page by page and see if people have got any points they want to raise. But you go first, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Chair. No, I was just going to say a couple of things really, just to start you off, just in terms of the report. I'm hoping now the format is becoming a little bit more familiar to those of you who are normally on the committee. So you have a Q3 report in front of you today, which covers the period, the 3-month period up to the end of December last year. And as you'll know, because we've looked at a couple of them before, they're based around the interim delivery plan, which flows from the council strategy and sets out the things that we were intending to do and track progress on this current financial year. It's arranged around the 6 priority themes in the council strategy. So there's a different section, different coloured section for each of those 6 themes. And within each of those themes, you get a little update on some key projects and activities, and then some key performance indicators. So just as a very brief overview, in terms of what's reporting in Q3, there were 34 of the 39 projects and activities that were green, and 4 that were amber, which just means they've got some kind of delay or issue going on with them. And there's details given in the report on those. And then we've got a little bit of a mixed bag this year because of the situation we're in with KPIs not being the normal selves, and we have issues with reporting on some of them and issues with target setting on others because things are not normal at the moment. So we have 24 key performance indicators which have what we call a RAG rating. So they have a target, and then we say whether they're on target, just off target, or away from target. And for Q3, 14 of those were green, which means they're on or better than target. 7 were amber, which means they're close to target but just not quite on target. And then 3 were off target, which just means they're more than 10% away from that target we set. So that's not a bad situation to be in, really. We have a few others that don't report a green, amber, red, but we're sort of tracking whether they're going up or down. And again, the majority of those were either sort of static or showing an improved performance. So that's, again, not a bad place to be in. Again, the report, which is your page 13 onwards, just gives you a summary at the front of there about where we are overall, and just pulls out a few highlights for you. And then from pages 16 onwards, you get a full breakdown of each of those projects and activities and each of the KPIs. So that was really all I was going to say, Chair. There's a bit of an
Thanks,
intro.
Alex. Thank you. Can I just ask one question first? Who sets the targets? And who then decides whether a target has been met or not? You know, red, amber, or green? Because I think, you know, if you set a target at a very low bar, then you'll get an awful lot of green. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what's happened here, but there's an awful lot of green here. But if you set a target low, then you will meet it, and there'll be a lot of green. So I think members maybe need to understand what the target setting process is and how you decide whether it's red, amber, or green. Could you just give us a brief outline of how that happens?
Yeah, so the target setting process is basically done by service areas, or depending on what the KPI is, it might be across a couple of different service areas. And it would normally be based on what's, you know, looking at your past performance. So where were you last year and the year before? What's a reasonable level to be aiming at in terms of what we have previously achieved? What are the kind of things that might influence that over the following year, perhaps, or the following couple of years? So if you think about something like council tax collection or NNDR collection rates, so we know what we've done in the past, we know what we've managed to collect in the previous years, but you would look ahead, and certainly we did have to adjust a couple of targets because it was very apparent going into this current financial year that things were not going to be normal. So targets this year have been affected by where we are, certainly. And then for other things, we just haven't been able to set a target. So we have a measure around leisure centre usage, for example, where previously we would want to set we were setting sort of ever increasing targets. We want to see it going up and a bit up and a bit up. But we haven't been able to set a target this year because they've been open and then closed and then open and then closed. So it just wasn't going to be appropriate. So it depends a little bit on what it is. So leisure centre usage would be an example of an area where we have wanted to see those usage figures going up. And so there's been a sort of 2% uplift or a 5% uplift, depending on where it is. In other areas, we might want to just make sure that we're achieving a certain standard. So it might not be an ever increasing percentage of something that you might want to set. It might be perfectly reasonable to say, we just want to make sure that that does not fall below a certain level. So there are some areas where we have probably had the same target for a number of years. I'm thinking about things like planning application processing times, that sort of thing, where we know what's a good standard of service and we want to try and achieve that good standard of service, and we don't want it to fall below that, but we're not constantly saying, well, this year we'll do 92% and then it'll be 95% and then it'll be 96%, but then, you know, it's not always appropriate to set an ever increasing figure. So it depends a little bit on what it is and what it's measuring.
So I assume it's, if you haven't already started, at some point soon, you'll be working out targets and standards and what counts as red, amber and green for from the year from 1st of April on. So
yes, and in terms of
setting those benchmarks, what role do we get to play in that?
Well, we would, I suppose, be intending to bring a draft of certainly delivery plan for the Scrutiny Committee to look at. And at that point, you would get to see what sort of targets had been set against different indicators.
Okay.
In terms of your second question, though, which was about the green, amber, red rating, that is at the moment done on a quite sort of a fixed basis across all of them, really, barring the odd one or two things where it just doesn't work, where we've agreed that our variance will be 10% away from. So when we get further than 10% away from whatever the target is that we've set, you fall into the red category. So if you're on or above, you're green. If you're in that little, nearly there, but not quite, you're amber. And then if you get 10% away, you're red.
Right, so we could thanks, Alex. We could pick that up when we get to look at next year's delivery plan, just to make sure we're not setting our bars too low. Malcolm Granger, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex, loud presentation, but a good one. Well done. You're page 15. You're off targets. What is being done to bring the 13% in the red in line with the rest of the issue's targets?
So in terms of key performance indicators, so that's saying that 13% are red. In actual fact, that's three indicators. Yeah. Two of which there's an explanation on page 15 there, two of which are relating to the spend with Cumbrian suppliers and then even more locally with Allerdale suppliers. And there's an explanation there that's basically we've had a number of large payments on capital projects, and so so they may have come out of area just by mere nature of what we've been buying, because you can't always buy everything within Cumbria, unfortunately. But there's a note there as well that says that Brendan's team's actually working on pulling out some of that subcontractor data as well, so we can be a little bit more forensic about where that spend's actually going. So the contractor might be from out of area, but if they use subcontractors within the area, then we might want to sort of capture that in terms of where our spend is actually going ultimately, who's doing the work, as it were, and is that benefiting our local businesses or not, I suppose. And at the moment we have quite a sort of headline figure as in who did we procure and where were they. So there's a bit of work going on there. The other indicator that's red is in the body of the report, and it's one of the ones that's measuring how far people like and look at things that are on social media, and that actually is one that does fluctuate quite a lot. So I haven't made a big comment about that because it does go up and down quite a lot over the year. So,
Well done, G.
Can
Yeah,
I follow one, Michael?
Go on, Malcolm.
Just on page 25, going to page 25.
Malcolm, could you hang on? I'm going to go through them page by page in a minute.
All right, Ollie.
Hang on, I just wanted to cover some general points first. I take your point about supply chain stuff. I mean, I know the number of suppliers to Sellafield which claim to be local, but actually just a brass plate on West Lakes Business Park, and that that gets them a postcode and a telephone number, but there's actually nobody there. Nick Hardy, I think you wanted to make an interjection here, which may be helpful to us, I hope.
I just wanted to make a point about the kind of the performance management framework in general. To be honest, you might recall that we've had conversations here before about wanting to revise that performance management framework. And if I'm being honest, I've not been able to progress that work as quickly as I would have liked for one reason or another. And certainly some of the departments that we would like to have more in-depth conversations with are difficult at this moment in time with the amount of work that some teams are doing. But I think it's definitely, hopefully within the summer months, we'll have a really much improved, stronger, revised version of the performance management plan that'll enable us to get into a bit more detail about what some of those targets are and why we have those targets. But I think it'll be more interesting for members as well to understand what data and what information we have and what we can use and how we use it. So I think I'm optimistic that hopefully as the year progresses that we'll have a far better and more detailed conversation about those targets and what that really means in terms of being able to use that data. And there'll obviously be a strong role for scrutiny in that process.
Thanks, Nick. Andy Semple, you indicated you want to speak, I think.
Yeah, I've took my hand down, Chair, because what you said to Malcolm, I had a specific question about page 25.
All right,
so
okay.
You said, okay.
Well, if we're done with the general stuff, let's go on to the body of the report. Starting, I think, at page 16, where we're into detail. Just as we go through it, page, if everybody's got an issue they want to raise, just raise your hand or shout. Page 16, 17. 18. I'll make a point here myself, if I may. It was one of the things that we were going to talk about was tackle and reduce fly tipping through enforcement action, educational activity, focusing resources on known hotspots, and it's agreeing. Given all the fuss we've had about fly tipping lately, you might think, why is that agreeing? And I think the difference, and I think that illustrates a difference between this system and with this approach to performance management and others. It may be that everything we did right. We did things right, and so we set out to do certain things, and we've done them. So it's agreeing. But fly tipping's gone up for other reasons which are completely out with our control. So if you like, the activity's been green, but because of other factors, the ultimate outcome maybe has not been green because fly tipping's got worse. And I think that actually maybe illustrates the kind of thing that we'll be talking to Nick about in terms of a revised approach to performance management frameworks. Alex isn't shaking her head, so I'll take it. I can go on there. Page 19.
Chair, I've got a question about page 18.
18. Go on then. Andy.
Okay. So recycle, and in a way, this is kind of I can kind of link this, juxtapose this with the thing about the Facebook stuff. So Stellar Street in Cockermouth over Christmas, just absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, and it's about how people behave. They think they're doing the right thing, so they bring huge amounts of cardboard. Yeah, flat screen tellies and the like. Yeah, and for a couple of days it looks absolutely awful. And then I look on page 25 and see that the Facebook reach is down. So the point I would make is you've got that as green carrot recycling initiatives. I think there's not enough out there, correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of there are key times in the year, Christmas being one, where you know that people are going to have lots and lots and lots of recycling. And I just think that when it comes to Christmas time, I could go back to the previous Christmas and I know people it's got right. And the problem with, I mean, I'm not sure where the other sort of recycling centres are in like the Keswick and Maryport, but certainly the one in Cockermouth, it is in the shop window. People see it. So, you know, they have a go at me, they have a go at Allerdale, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So I think we need to be more proactive. And for me, it's about communicating with people. Thank you.
Can we ensure that the point that Councillor Semple just made gets communicated to the, I can't remember what it's called these days, whoever's in charge of that sort of stuff, the street scene team, whoever they work for now in the new structure. Can you do that? Can you do that, Lee? Just make a note, make sure that Councillor Semple's comments are passed on that point.
Will do, Chair.
Thank you. Page 20. In Greeny.
Yeah, just a quick one, Chair. Number of fly tipping incidents, Alex. I think we've got the trend going down, and it's actually going up from quarter two to quarter three, up to 336.
Yeah,
I want to see if the overall trend in the line or on the year.
No, the trends are, yeah, I always wonder how to present these properly. The trend indicates that it's got worse, not that the number's gone down. So the trend is, has it got better or has it got worse? Yeah. And obviously some things are better if the number is bigger, and other things are better if the number is smaller. Okay. So it's always a bit of a tricky one when you get to the trends, because you've got to either explain on every single one of them or have a little explanation. So there is a little explanation at the top in the key, but I know it's confusing because some of them are bigger is better or smaller is better on some of them. Yeah, I thought that was the case. Just on the percentage of bins collected on the schedule on collection day there, I've seen we've gone from amber to green in the space of 0.01%. Yeah, it's because so because I presume there must be. I know you mentioned about going into red if we're 10% below. Obviously, there's a significant difference, and we've got to actually probably close that gap in terms of when we go into the red, given the numbers that it involved. I was just wondering what the red number was, given we are such such big numbers. I would have to work it out because I haven't got it in front of me at the moment. But but yes, on that one, the different, because the numbers of collections are so huge, so huge. I appreciate that. And the difference between missing 85 bins or missing 125 bins makes such a tiny difference in the percentage. It does get a bit tricky, and then it is one of the things that we do think about. Do we have a blanket variance from target, or do we have it different for different ones? But it becomes, you have to be quite sophisticated to have it different across all of them, and there are a few areas where that standard variance just doesn't work. If you get down to very small numbers as well, so if we've got a target of say 5 for something, it doesn't work very well as a variance. So yeah, I think I was just hoping you're going to say it's 99.86 or something like that, rather than 89.92. No, it's something like 99.8 something, 88 or something like that. It's something around that figure, but I haven't got it in front of me, I'm afraid. That just clarifies it. No, that's great, Alex. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Can we go to the investor growth section, which is pages 21 to 23?
Yeah, Chair, I've got a.
Go on then, Andy.
It's actually a positive comment. I mean, congratulations really on the middle part about the grants and sport grants and the refresh. So a lot of small businesses in Cockermouth Town Centre that are people that I know in the early days all approached me, and there was a lot of confusion. So I think well done to the staff who was working on this, first of all, because I think it's a phenomenal achievement, and I think the refresh and the website is really, really good, easy to follow. So congratulations. Thank you.
On that on that same page, develop the housing company. Although the housing company has been set up, and I noticed in the budget proposals that the officer who was the post of officer who was going to run the housing company hasn't been approved. And I understand that given the pressures on us at the moment, the executive doesn't think we can move very fast with the housing company at the moment because of the other pressures on staffing and resources and budget, the need to gear up to deliver on Workington and Maryport and other regeneration schemes. And it looks as though, although the housing company actually has been set up and something's happening, it's going to be, I understand, pretty slow progress for a while. So again, yeah, we've got a green because housing company, yeah, it legally exists, but actually, in terms of the outcome we want to see, lots of houses being built, that is, that's quite a way off yet, for reasons to do with external factors and not because anybody's, fallen down on the job. And there's that's a priority judgment which the executive will make, and we'll look at when we come to consider the budget on Wednesday at the council meeting. Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the building at Otley Road. I walked by there the other day. I'd seen nothing at all has happened. Is there any progression on that at all? I mean, it's been, I think planning was granted middle of last year. So I'm a bit concerned that it doesn't seem to be moving ahead.
I suspect we'll have to ask the service responsible for doing that. I would not sometimes expect Alex to know.
No, I thought I'd make it as a comment that we don't.
Alex off the top of the head. We'll get it. I'm sure Alex will get you an answer on that, Alan.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, can we go on to the next section, outstanding local services, pages 24 to 26. Anything there? No. Thriving towns and villages, pages 27 to 29 to 31. Resilient communities, pages 33 to.
Chair, I think Councillor Granger's trying to say something.
Sorry, I can't see anybody.
No, I haven't put my hand up. Sorry, I was rather busy. Page 25. There's just an information thing that a lot of these bins was missed through ice and bad weather.
Yep.
And on the health and safety issue, the lads at AWS that were recommended not to participate. Just a bit of information. That's all, Michael.
Yeah, we'll understand. Sometimes circumstances outside our control.
Yeah. That's grand. Thank you.
Chair, now you're on mute.
Sorry. Right. Are we done with the performance report? I didn't spot anything in the accompanying finance report that jumped out as an immediate cross-reference. But if anybody has, please shout up. But if not, let's go on to the next item on the agenda, which is to note the forward plan. Most of the stuff in there we've either covered in this committee, or it's happened, or it's just a kind of thing that that just happens and doesn't require us to particularly look at it. I think I have to go through to page 43 to see any significant issues for us. Acquisition of buildings in Maryport, the economic strategy investment plan, which Nick has referred to. Apart from that, they're all, I think, standard items, routine items. Okay. Next item is our own work programme. Having had a look at the work programme with Ian Greeny, myself and Ian as co-chairs, we're suggesting that as the economic strategy is going to executive according to the forward plan at the back end of April, then the appropriate time to pick up on it, if there are any issues arriving out of the policy working group on Monday, would be the 26th of March agenda, or the 26th of March meeting. And as the Workington programme and the Maryport programme, we've already had presentations on them, and they actually form part of the overall economic strategy anyway, that we, instead of focusing just on the town-based programmes in Workington and Maryport, we look at the overall economic strategy with covering the town-based programmes in passing, and indeed any other town-based programmes that might be more than a gem of an idea in officers' heads or executive heads by that time. Is that okay? I'd also like to suggest that at the same meeting we cover local government reorganisation. As you know, there's a consultation on at the moment. Mr. Jenrick has launched a consultation, which actually ends on the 29th of April. And I think it would be appropriate for us to look at what responses we've had as a council from our citizens that have been presented to us as a council, and what responses we might have or want to make either individually or collectively, if we want to make a collective response to Mr. Jenrick's consultation on the local government reorganisation proposals. Even if it is, we don't like any of it, to hell with it all. We want to stay as we are, even if I think I doubt we'll get away with that. But if that's what members want to do, then we could look at that. So is that okay on for the March meeting? Malcolm Granger.
Michael, I agree with you, because this fellow from London seems to have got a push at the moment, and why he's bringing it into party politics into Cumbria, I honestly don't know. But I don't see where there's a need for it, or it'll save money, but I don't think there's a terrible need for it. That's just my opinion.
Well, perhaps we can cover that at the March meeting.
I agree with you.
And then at the April meeting, we've got lined up other scrutiny bodies, or our representatives and other scrutiny bodies to report back to us, so we can kind of join it up better. LEP Scrutiny, Police and Crime Panel, Cumbria Health, Sellafield Sites. I think maybe we need to, perhaps if Ian could make a note, that maybe between now and the end of March, during March, we appraise those people of what it is we expect of them. Otherwise, we run the risk of people turning up, sitting there and saying, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to ask me that. I didn't know why I was coming. I can't answer your question. I'll have to go away." So I think we need to do some preparatory work with those people involved. There, we've also got some other items that will be coming back at some point, but it's not clear exactly when, so we can't program them yet. And we also need to, at some point, before, probably before the April meeting, troll members of the council to establish what is members might like to see on the work programme for this committee beyond April. Of course, it will be for the committee after the annual general meeting of the council to decide its own work programme, but at least if we've done a bit of preparatory work for them, they're not sitting sucking their thumbs, looking at a blank sheet of paper and thinking, "Oh dear, what are we going to do?" We need to trawl for issues and concerns before then. So we'll suggest that Ian will arrange to circulate all members of the council on that point. Anything else on work programme?
Councillor Greeny has his hand up.
Sorry, so you do, Ian. Sorry, didn't see that. The sun's shining right on my screen. Your lips are moving, but no sound coming out.
On mute. Yeah, just about the LGR in March, on the March programme. I think I'm keen to see exactly what the other unitary options are as well from the other boroughs. I think that's as important as our own. If we are going to have proper consultation, it's important that the people know exactly what is being put forward for all of the options, not just our own, I think, to give them that, to allow them to make a proper judgment, if that's okay. I'm not sure how we'll tackle that in terms of who'll bring that information to the party type of thing, but I think it's something that we really need to have in terms of when we go out to consultation.
Yeah.
Chair, I was just going to ask, are you able to clarify what you're asking for there? Because I think, I presume Nick will be able to give you a resume of the council's submission and how that relates to the other. But are you looking for some detail from those other submissions about what their view is? Or?
Yeah, I was hoping for some detail so we can make a comparative, really, in terms of, you know, economic benefits and that type of thing, because they'll all have their own perception of things in terms of where they see their benefits and why their option is the best one, and they've got to surely back that up with some kind of justification and data. And I would like to see that, be able to make that comparative to see exactly where they're coming from.
They've all published, but I don't think we can expect to sit and read through all the submissions. Maybe, I don't know. I'll have a think about how we do that, Ian.
Yeah.
I don't think we can ask somebody from Barrow or South Lake to come and do a pitch for their market bay proposal, for example. But they might be able to send us a sheet of paper that summarises it, that we can look at, or something like that. Maybe. I don't know. Well, we'll have to have a think about. Well, me and you will have to have a think about how we do that.
I think that's just my concern in terms of it being rushed through. We aren't being given the information so we can make a comparative assessment of what's actually being put forward. The information isn't there for us.
So, Mr. Chair,
I don't feel. I must admit, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Nick,
Mr. Chair, I was just going to say that in the statement that the minister released, there's a link to all of the proposals.
Yeah.
So if you follow the link that the Secretary of State put out, then you can follow the links in there to get all 4 proposals for Cumbria, and you can even go further afield if you want and look at the Yorkshire examples as well in terms of all of those initial submissions. So they're all freely available if people want to go into them. I think I just need to double check in terms of process that we have to go through as an organisation. So we're a formal consultee in that process, and we will have to make a response to government in terms of the other 3 proposals as well as our own. So the kind of the position that we're in at the moment is that as an organisation we have to encourage organisations and encourage people to participate in the consultation. We can't push our particular preference that we submitted as an option. We can't campaign, or we can't lobby on the basis of please support the submission that we made. So I think we'll be relatively quiet and relatively neutral in terms of our comms. What we'll be doing is signposting people to the government website where that consultation will be held, and encouraging people to put submissions forward. But I just need to double check in terms of the process as to how we will endorse and authorise the formal response that we will make to government. If you remember last time, obviously it was an executive decision. I just need to make sure that that's the case again. I know Sharon and I have started to have that conversation this week, but as soon as we conclude that conversation, we'll come back and we'll let you know.
Yeah, I think what disturbed me from the initial one is that there was very little detail within it to underpin it as such. I think it was more words than data and information, and I think that was my concern with it, to be honest.
Right. Well,
I was hoping it would have moved on from there by when we come to March and there's a formal submission.
Dick, is that once you've bunged your submission in, you can't actually submit. That's it, innit? What was submitted in December is you can't add to it, you can't change it, you can't say, here we forgot to put this in, or here's a supporting paper that makes an even better argument than we made at the time. That is that it? We can't add it. We can only comment on it. You can't change it or argue for it any more that's been made already.
Yeah, that's the public document now that will be consulted upon.
That's the public documents being consulted on, so you can't actually add to it. Right. Okay. Well, please let us know how your discussions with Sharon go, because I mean, if you have to, we can have one response from the executive and another one from the council, like we did last time. I'd rather not have to do that, but let's can't rule it out. Andy Semple.
Thanks, Chair. It's kind of linked to what Councillor Drini was just talking about, but forgive me, obviously I'm not normally a full-time member of this committee, but what concerns me with the whole organisation going on, it's an incredibly, it's a difficult time for staff. I mean, I was saying before about how great the staff have done in terms of the business grants. Yeah, the things that we could go on. Would it be not, there's nothing, it's all the things that I look at on here are kind of, somebody used that word granular. It could have been Nick. I think a lot of it is kind of nuts and bolts, but it's the people who put the nuts and bolts together. Shouldn't we be looking at staff engagement, staff absences, staff? I'd want to make sure that staff in Allerdale are being looked after during a very, very difficult time. Thank you.
We have on that point, if I may, I'll come to a moment when we cover the pandemic task and finish group. One of the things we're doing there is we've got a meeting lined up with Andrew Seekins, specifically covering that particular point about how we deal with staffing issues and the impact on the way we need to work, not just in the recovery phase, but if the world is going to be completely different in 2 or 3 years' time, quite apart from any local government organisation, how do we need to operate differently, and what difference does that make to how staff work? I mean, you've seen that Brendan has already suggested that COVID has had an impact on the traditional kind of what I would call command and control management systems, where you come to work and your manager tells you what to do, and then you go home again. And in the Scottish situation, that kind of command and control management system just doesn't work. It can't work. So we need to develop different ways of working. Malcolm Granger, you've got your hand up.
I have, Mr. Chair. I've just a question for Brendan and Nikki, just to verify that the bid that we put forward for the unitary, it was a consensus of opinion between officers and exec. Is that true or not?
No. I would have thought so.
Right.
I think it was the exec. It's the document is the executive's document.
Right.
The bid that was submitted was a document by the executive.
That's done. Mr. Chairman, I'll have to leave because I have to go somewhere else now.
Right. Okay.
So thank you very much, people.
Thank you. We'll be finishing in a couple of minutes, I hope. I'm sorry, I've run over the 3:30 time limit I set myself. Thank you, Malcolm.
Chairman, can I just assure Councillor Semple in terms of the staff welfare, just that certainly in terms of from an SMT perspective, that we've dedicated an awful lot of time to that at this moment in time, and we've through the HR team we've put in place a lot of additional support for staff, both in terms of their mental welfare, but also in terms of just things like office chairs and things like that that people can use at their home, and we've been delivering those types of things. So we've done an awful lot, but as far as we're concerned, that's an ongoing piece of work. And I know that I pulled together a document just for, I think it's going to go to SMT next week or the week after, in terms of looking at new ways of working and what that means and how we can continue to look after their health and the well-being of the staff team at Allerdale. There is lots and lots of examples of good practice and good ideas that are out there at the moment, and so for us it's just working through all of that as to how we can incorporate that best practice into our own working. So I can just assure members that we are, we're working really hard at that. We're by no means perfect, but we continually revisit that conversation.
Thanks, Nick. Just through the chair, I suppose the other thing I should have mentioned is the fact that everybody everywhere is working from home, and that's completely different, isn't it? And if there's something going on, it can get worse. So what you're saying is really good to hear. And maybe it's a plea again through the chair is that, stuff that you've just told me, that it would be good to know that as a member, for you to tell me that, without me having to ask that question out. But that's really good. Thank you.
I'll have a conversation with Kelly and with Andrew Gilbert if we can get something into the next members briefing.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, next item on the agenda, if I can go to that, is the task and finish group reports. We've only got, we've had two running recently, unless I've forgotten one. There's the pandemic working group, which is there's a report on that in the report we put into council on Wednesday. We've looked at the impacts on poverty and child poverty of the pandemic. We've looked at the impacts on schooling and made some recommendations. We've looked at impacts on communities. And again, I will emphasise there's a very good piece of work being done. Emma Thompson from the Hub's been involved in at Moor Close, which maybe is a model that councillors could look at. Because there's no reason why it doesn't have to be done at Moor Close. We chose Moor Close because it looked like a good place to start. But there's no reason why it couldn't be done in other places. We've looked at the impact of a pandemic on basically the council's operating model as it stands at the moment. And we're going to, as I mentioned, be talking to Andrew Seekins about, okay, in this brave new world, a couple of years hence, assuming we ever get out of this, the world is going to look different, and no going back to how it used to be, and how do it change in response to that. So there'll be further reports coming back to this committee when that's all kind of thought through and written up. But just to let you know, the work's continuing, and if anybody wants to join that pandemic working group, then please do. And the other group that's just wrapped up at this phase of its development anyway, we'll have to see if it goes anywhere next, was the budget task and finish group, which is primarily understanding how a budget is built, understanding how a budget's actually put together and what the pressures are. And we had a meeting on that yesterday afternoon, where we, in challenging the council decision-making process, or the executive's decision-making process, we looked at all the things that had been suggested for inclusion in the budget, both cuts and savings, and all the things actually made it into the final budget as considered by executive, and why some things got through and not others, both in terms of cuts and savings, and try not to say whether we agree with you or not, but try to understand the rationale for doing that. But there are a couple of concerns that we we did raise that we'll want to keep an eye on, I think, through the course of the year, assuming the budget gets approved, and who knows what council will do with it on Wednesday, but assuming the budget gets approved as it stands, we had, I think, a number of concerns about whether we were actually committing sufficiently to maintenance of our existing assets. It's all very well getting carried away with new build, but sometimes you need to make sure that your existing assets are being looked after properly. And the other issue is if we're going to do all the kind of transformational stuff that we've been talking about doing, that Brendan and Nick and others have been talking about doing, who's going to do it? Because we're not exactly overstaffed these days. There's nothing left, and the only way that's going to happen is probably by some musical chairs, if I can call it that. People are going to have to be flexible, take on different skills, take on different jobs, do things differently. Again, we'll be talking to the chief executive about that in a budget task and finish meeting, but actually links into the stuff we've been talking about in terms of the pandemic impact on the council as well. So we're reporting back on that, and if anybody's got any questions about those items, I'll try and answer them. No? Great. It's Friday afternoon. Is there anything else?
Are you going to see Crackerjack, Michael?
Sorry? I'm going to get my personal supply of Enidil Blonde in a minute from my supplier for the weekend. Anyway, I don't care if that's broadcast. I'm not bothered at all. So anyway, if no other business, thank you all very much. Have a good weekend, and we'll